Yo guys, what's happening? Welcome to my video that I've done with Jamie on how you could grow big trees. The numbers in this video are insane and I think you're going to learn a lot. So follow us on this journey of how Jamie was able to cultivate some absolute monsters using organic nutrients. So check it out. Just for our listeners, as I said in the intro, Jamie this year is going to grow some beautiful outdoor trees. I could call them. They were 3 times my height. and he's basically going to be telling everyone or giving us some tips on how you could achieve it for yourself if it's what you're looking for next year. Jamie, when we were chatting before we started filming, you were saying you have quite a lot of outdoor experience. So is it your preferred place to grow? Tell me a little bit how you got into the idea of cultivating these big trees.
So I think I'm always just trying to push it with the growing, see how far I can go and kind of, I think, challenge myself. So I've grown, fairly big plants before, but this year I just wanted to give it a good go and grow some of those Mendo style big trees. Also now that things are a bit more relaxed with growing in South Africa, I think we have opportunity now to grow big trees like that without too much consequence, whereas in the past we had to worry about your neighbors seeing or things like that. But now you can grow outside and those, I kept it within the plant limit. Well, plant limit, we don't really know what it is yet.
Yes,
but I just had 5 big ones and then a 6th kind of medium-sized one. But I wanted to just grow some of those big trees, see what it was like. Also grow in a bigger pot. So the biggest pot I've grown in before was 150-liter fabric pot for outdoors. Well, it was in a tunnel. And then this year I went for the 300. Well, those pots are actually hold 500 liters, but I put 300 liters of soil in.
Wow.
And I found it actually a bit easier having a few big plants than a bunch of smaller plants. It's just kind of a little bit easier to manage, I found. And it was quite an easy, enjoyable grow this year. It's pretty simple, really.
I must say, walking, I used to watch a lot of YouTube when I was younger and getting into my growing, and you'd always see those videos of the dudes walking through these like American farms in Cali, and the buds are like 3 times their height, and that's kind of what it felt like standing by these plants. So for me to be able to come and see it was really, really epic, and you did a really good job. And just on the point of the less plants, my brother and his girlfriend also grow, and they stay somewhere else. So every year their space is slightly more limited than mine, and they always do maybe 5 to 9 plants around there, and sort of year on year, they've pulled very consistent results on larger plants, or similar results to me, where I had to do far more volume of smaller plants, so it's quite interesting that if you put more effort into lesser, the good results that you can get. So I mean, you've mentioned the pots. What did 500 liters, what soil did you use, and how did this grow start out? Tell us about the strains, the soil, and just sort of the early stages of this grow. What measures did you put in place?
So the strains, I specifically grew powdery mildew resistant strains that I've grown for years, and because last year I grew quite a few different strains, and like most of them got PM.
Yes.
I was slack on my IPM, but still, if you have strains that are PM resistant, it's just a pleasure to grow them outdoors compared to. And I think I've even heard from some growers, it's what put them off growing outdoors is like PM, and that it's just harder to control than indoors. So with these strains, it was Blue Dream and Blueberry Hash Plant. and the cuts of these that I have are just super PM resistant. So they didn't get a speck of PM, and I didn't even spray the specific PM. I just sprayed a trichoderma, which is kind of like a broad spectrum biofungicide, and not a speck, which was really great. So that also makes it just much easier and a more pleasurable grow. And then they had, I would say, about a month of veg in a tent before they went out. So they were kind of hardened off, and they had their groove going, they were in their flow, and then they went out and they had 2 months of veg outdoors. So I planted them out the end of October, and then they vegged for November and December, and then in January they would go into flower. So, but
and how did you? Just before we carry on, a lot of the time when guys are bringing clones from inside, outside, they're getting that sort of flower to re-veg period. What measure did you have in place to be able to keep the sort of flow, as you said, from that indoor into the outdoor space?
So I just have 2 20-watt LEDs, like porch spotlights, on one side, and then on the other side I had like these little solar charging LEDs. Because at first, so the supplemental lighting is important in South Africa outdoor, because in our hours of sunlight, it's just not enough hours of sunlight. In the peak of summer, I think it's around 15 hours, but normally in summer it will be around 14 hours of daylight, and that's much closer to the 12 cycle, which wants to make the plant go into flower, than the 18. And most of these plants are bred under 18 hours of light,
and stored if you have mother plants as well, so they're used to it.
And I mean, if you look overseas, I think in some other areas they have more light, so they can plant outside and not have this re-veg situation flower issue that we have here. So you might get away with it here, but it's pretty cheap and not a lot of work to put up some LED porch lights. And then I just had those rigged to a switch in my house that I just switched on and off, but you could put it on a timer. It's just, less to worry about.
The perception you need hundreds of watts outside as your supplementary light isn't the case. You can pick up those little 10-watt outdoor waterproof spots from Pick and Pay. They come in packs of 2 for like $100, so a few of those, and you've got a really good solution, or obviously maybe some stronger ones up to a 50-watt. They're not so expensive. So I think that's a really good point, because I learned the hard way a couple years back when I started working heavily with clone, getting a heavy season of just heavy re-veg, and it delays everything by a good 2 months, so you lose the whole growth season to re-veg. And
also I think just on that, you don't want to go too bright outside, because it might attract attention to your grow in your area. So just some low wattage LEDs that just make the plant think the day is a bit longer than it actually is. And it also gives you a bit of more room to play around. Maybe you plant out late in the season, and then you can actually just veg it a bit longer in summer, and put your plants into flower at the end of, say, Jan. It gives you a bit of room to play with, having those lights.
I did that. And I have a bed in the back and a bed in the front, and I did in my front bed, I just left it, and that flowered out earlier. And then in the back, I actually stretched it all the way to mid-Feb when I turned the lights off. And I found all of that got seeded in the later season stuff. So maybe you're finishing a bit earlier is advisable. Let's dig a little bit into some of the specifics. Substrate-wise, what did you make use of?
So we used August. Well, I used August Soilux, which is our flagship soil. So obviously I'm going to go with that.
And anything else, or August Soil straight?
Pardon?
Oh, for the veg stage and the planting stage, it was August Soil straight, correct? Not with the top
straight August Soilux.
Yes.
And yeah, so I planted them out, and then I let them go for like 2 months before I gave them a top dressing.
Okay.
And then I would give them a liquid nutrient feeds. Once a week is sufficient. Sometimes I would be a bit lax, so they might get a liquid nutrient feed every 2 weeks.
Yes.
And also some compost tea. I mean, I'm not too critical on that, but also the plants, when they get going and those at that size that they really do start consuming a lot of nutrients. So
Yes.
after 2 months in that of vegging in that soil, I needed to top dress with the elemental blend, which is quite a broad nutrient pack.
Easy to use
Um,
as well, so it's
yeah,
a nice all-rounder there where you're getting a lot of you're making sure you're getting everything you need, I think.
yeah, exactly. It's got everything and you need that, so you can just dump it there. You don't have to now go and source individual amendments and all of that.
Yes, yes.
And it's very balanced in its nutrients, and also the biochar helps to release those things at a good rate. And then also I top dressed with elemental blend and seabird guano, which is high in nitrogen.
Yes.
So that was after 2 months of veg. I could see the plants were needing a bit of an extra boost. And also that was when start of flower happened. And
Okay.
I learned from last year that a good application of the seabird guano at the start of flower is really nice to get them through that heavy nitrogen consumption that they go through, and they're stretching out. They really use a lot of nutrients then.
Yes, yes.
Um, so that was really helpful to do the seabird guano, and then that just pushed them through. But they eat a lot at that stage. I could have maybe done another top dress halfway through flower.
Yes, okay.
And
What
it
would
would have
you
been
suggest the same then?
beneficial.
Or would it be maybe bat guano then?
Probably the bat guano, I think, because it's got quite also a nice nutrient composition for flowering. There's good amount of nitrogen, and then a lot of phosphorus and a good amount of potassium.
Yes, yes. Okay, so a little bit on the veg nutrient liquid feeds. What kinds of products were you making use of during the veg period?
So there I would be using Thrust. It used to be called BioNitro. It's now
Okay.
changed its name to Thrust. So Thrust, and then Compost Tea, then the Cannabis Microbial Consortium, and probably the Bio Boost. Yeah.
So for those
ones.
those are hearing some of those products for the first time, give me a short little description of the Thrust and a short little description of the Bio Boost that you just mentioned.
So the Thrust is basically a fish hydrolysate, which
Okay.
is, a cold processing compared to fish emulsion, which is, a hot process. More of the beneficial compounds are retained.
Okay, it's like cold
In the
pressing
cold
juice.
processing. Yeah, and it's also very high in amino acids, so that's a good product for the nitrogen.
Yes.
And then the Bio Boost is a fish, or not a fish, a kelp extract. So that is your growth hormones from kelp,
Yes.
which
Okay.
just help to push the plant along as well.
Excellent. Okay, and I mean we've covered a lot of the substrate, the strains, but also when you are planning to grow big, before we go into the flowering period, you're planning to grow big, you obviously have to take into account that you're going to be packing a lot of weight, and that the plants, I mean, I know where you are, it's quite windy in the summer period, so we've got wind to deal with. What other measures besides pot size, good genetics, and the feedings you've mentioned did you put in place in preparation for the big trees?
Well, so another thing we didn't mention, but it is mulch. A really big fat layer of alfalfa mulch.
Okay,
Because
yes.
also in the summer, and when it's windy, it helps to keep the soil moisture in, and it helps to insulate the soil. So mulch is very important. And then the IPM, because I knew my strains, and because it's quite windy, like you said, where I stay, I don't have too much pests in terms of insects. I had a few like caterpillars, and then I would use dipel, or this BTK. It's a bacteria that attacks caterpillars. And then I had, oddly enough, root aphids, which is like a really weird pest to get, and especially outdoors as well. And I don't think most people would notice it, but the root aphid's brown or dark compared to the green aphids that hang up in the top of the plant.
Yes.
And those, oddly enough, I didn't treat it, but it attracted a lot of ladybugs.
Oh, wow.
And it was just full of ladybugs, which kind of sorted that problem out in veg. It wasn't an issue later on in flower.
So do you think the ladybugs actually defeated the root aphids?
Yeah, I think the ladybugs, and then also just the environmental pressures like the cold and wind and things like that. But the ladybugs pulled in there thick, and then there were a lot of these ladybug larvae cruising around, chowing the aphids.
Okay, cool.
So I mean, that's nature kind of doing its thing,
Yeah, and that's the plus side of using organic products. You're not negatively affecting your beneficial bugs. So it's just helping build that environment more. Okay, excellent. So we've discussed a majority of our veg and the preparation. Therefore, you've also mentioned that you did a top dressing at the start of flower. Tell us a little bit about the flowering period. I mean, the growth for me personally was insane. To get the veg, just a 2-month veg, and then to see plants of that size at the end of flower was mind blowing. So yeah, take us through the flowering period a bit. How was it?
Yeah, so flowering, what I normally do is in about the middle of Jan, I would cut the lights.
Yes.
And that basically puts the plants into a hard, fast flower, So, and I also, it's nice because then I know the point at when I started flowering, and I can get a good expected harvest date, compared to if you're just outside without any lights, and it's doing its funny re-veg thing. You don't really know when you're gonna end off,
It's impossible to know then.
Yeah, and then in terms of feeding, it was I fed the Biofos, which is now changed to Liquifos, and the Kapow, which is on there's a bit of a supply issue with that at the moment, and then the compost teas, and that was about it on the liquid feeds. Also the Cannabis Microbial Consortium.
Still maintaining the once weekly liquid feed. Is that correct?
Yeah, but sometimes I would skip, but
the irregular.
And then because I knew I wouldn't get PM, I just really sprayed trichoderma for bud rot, which can be an issue at the end of flowering. Especially because the rains come and things. So the trichoderma, I think, is quite an important one to spray on through flowering, and just get those trichoderma microbes into the flower, and they're gonna help prevent the bud rot.
Yes.
And then I did get one weird issue. Was some kind of fungal issue on 2 of the trunks. And you can see it start to work its way up. And that can be from beetles that crawl into the soil, and, they have microbes on their mouth parts. So when they chew on things, those microbes can get passed on to there. So that I also treated with trichoderma and mycorrhizal fungi. I just made a paste with the powder and the liquid, and then I painted that onto the trunk of the plants, and it really helped to stop that from moving up. But that was also like a bit of a worrisome thing, you know. You got these massive trees that you know, like a few weeks away from harvest, and then you see this thing moving up the trunk, and you're just like, oh no.
Yeah, and when you've only got 5 plants, you know, you've got to every plant counts heavily, especially when they're twice the
exactly. You
human
know, so
size.
it's nice the less plants, but also then, you know, it's also the value of them is more because you only have 5.
Less.
So if you lose one of those, it's like a fifth of your harvest gone.
Yeah, that's like 3 months of your year, and you're like, I'm gonna run short.
Yeah.
You know. Okay.
But yeah, the trichoderma is a very, especially the biotricho that is available that we sell. I don't know,
Yes.
I think you guys also
Yes.
have. It's
Yes.
got quite a few different strains of trichoderma in it, so it's a very powerful one for fungal issues.
And I had a thought on this one, cost wise on your, I mean, the substrates are obviously relative, you know, substrates are always quite pricey, but worth it. Cost wise on your, they were large plants. Did they consume a lot of nutrients like volume wise, or did you not really feel that was the case?
No, I mean, in terms of liquid nutrients, not a lot. You know, you could probably, I would advise someone to maybe get a 5 liter of each of the nutrients that you're going to use the most of. Then also the price is a bit better on a 5 liter. And yeah, it's not a heavy consumption of nutrients. I didn't find it that much. And I'm only putting in about, I would say, 3 liters of liquid nutrient feed when I do feed. So it's not,
yes,
you know, it's not a lot.
And were the ladies drinking a lot?
Yeah, well, so in the start of the grow, then I just water once in the morning, but towards the end of summer and the middle of summer, then I water in the morning and afternoons.
And literage wise per water per plant?
Oh, I don't know. I just stand there with the hose. So, but I would say, yeah, I'd probably give them around between 5 and 8, or maybe 5 and 10 liters a day.
Yes. Okay. Excellent.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about the processing. Was it difficult having sheer volume, or were you kind of, because you're prepared with a lot of big plants ending at the same time, was it quite a mission? Did you handle it fine? Any tips in that space?
It does become a little bit crowded when everything comes down, you know.
Yes.
Drying everything is a bit of, takes up a lot of space, drying it all in one go. But then it goes pretty fast. Got a friend who helps, so
yes.
Get through it pretty quick.
Yeah, it's important to have someone to help when it comes to harvesting.
It's a laborious task.
So how was your, I think in closing, let's chat a little bit about how everything turned out. Did you make any nice hashes, or what did you do with some of the trim, and how was the flour at the end of the day?
Well, so I mean, I think probably people are curious also on the weights of
I mean, if you're comfortable.
Well, it's already just data and information at the end of the day. So on the biggest one, I think I got 1.2.
Excellent. That's incredible.
kgs off. And then some of the other ones, they were like 950 grams, the kind of smaller ones, you know.
Yes.
So I'd say average around a kg off those plants, dried, proper bud, no popcorn. Which I think is a nice kind of target to aim for as a grower, and to hit that. It's a bit of a, I don't know, a number to work to.
That's even, I must say, on this point, like I've the last few years I've got lots of different strains. I'm doing a lot of strain testing for genetics, but Jamie's definitely inspired me to just do like 4 or 5 plants next year rather. It seems like a more advisable choice, especially with how busy I am. I mean, obviously it's still effort, but it's just less plants to look at, you know, that you get.
And it makes the grow easier, you know, and more fun and enjoyable.
Yeah, so those are some excellent numbers. Like, I'm highly impressed, I must say. And final product wise, how, I mean, you've obviously grown the strains before they cuts, you know, well. How did it all turn out, bud wise?
Yeah, no, it all turned out great. Also not really seeded.
Oh,
A
nice.
few seeds here and there. But that's also a bit of a worry with growing outdoors, and so many people growing nowadays, is that you know, rogue male pollen flies around and seeds your stuff. But it wasn't too badly seeded, and the quality was really phenomenal. I mean, I think, you know, lights are great and all these days, but to compete with the sun is difficult. So
especially when you look at the yields, you know, like to grow those kinds of numbers indoors, you're looking at probably over 100,000 rands worth of investment just in lights, you know, and you can do it for a couple of thousand rand outdoors and have incredible quality. So, I mean, not to hate on indoor growing, I love growing indoors as well, but I much definitely prefer my outdoor grows. So Jamie, there's one more question I wanted to ask. I just want to mention, you obviously mentioned that these are strains that you know well. So just maybe in closing, what for people who aren't that familiar with their strains, what would have you done slightly differently? Maybe more of a focus on some heavier IPM, or what kinds of suggestions would you have for someone trying this for the first time with lesser experience?
Yeah, you have to just have a solid IPM program in place if you are growing strains you're not familiar with. I did grow a strain that I hadn't grown before outdoors this year, and it did get powdery mildew.
Yes. Whereas none the others didn't get a spot, right? So
no.
yes.
No.
Well,
but I saw, you know, I kind of expected it in a way because I hadn't grown it. So I was prepared, and I, you know, applied various IPM products to control the PM, and it controlled it pretty well. So yeah, just IPMs. The IPM, is very important if you don't know your strains, and if you are a noob grower. Having a proper pest prevention plan in place is important. And also it depends on your area and your environment. You know, like the pests I get in my area probably going to be very different to what someone in Durban is going to say get. You know, Durban's super humid. I think they have a lot of powdery mildew issues there. So, you know, just be prepared with a pest program going forward. But that, I mean, that's across the board for growing. And it's often people get to it last, they're more concerned about feeding plants. But the pest prevention is really important, and just get ahead of it rather than be on the back foot.
Yeah, I mean, you heard Jamie, he missed a few feeds, you know, but the pest prevention is definitely not somewhere you want to miss it, because the plants can handle the nutrients sometimes with nutrients less is more anyway. But with pest prevention, you really don't want to get something in there, especially when you're dealing with larger plants. Okay, excellent. I think we've covered all the points that we wanted to. Thanks so much to Jamie for letting us have a beautiful look at all of this awesome imagery of the trees. And what's your goals for next year? 1.5 per plant.
Well, 3 months of veg outdoors, and then we'll see what transpires. And I think a bit more feeding. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, thanks so much, Jamie. I appreciate it, and hope everyone enjoyed the showcase of how to grow larger trees. And I just want to say thanks so much for watching, guys. That was a flippin' sick video. 1 key average per plant,
Oaks are sending it. I hope this has inspired you for next season, and we look forward to another rendition of Big Trees in the future. So peace, guys.